Good morning once again. So let's continue from where we stopped. So we had looked at haiku and we had looked at free verse poem. So now we are looking at sonnet, and we say that sonnet is best described as a lyric poem that consists of 14 lines. So it is strictly 14 lines, no less, no more. Are we together? So it is a 14 lines. That's what we call a sonnet. And sonnets have at least one or two conventional rhyme scheme. So in a sonnet poem, it is very easy to get a what? Rhyming words that forms a rhyme scheme. Are we together? Unlike what we got in haiku and free verse poem, it was very difficult for us to identify the rhyming words. But here in sonnet, it is easy for you to get a rhyme scheme. Are we together? Now, let's look at a poem down there, an example of a sonnet. So many strange things happened me to see, as much as it grieves me to think Tyrion. At my right hand a hinder appeared to me, so fair as mote, the greatest god delight. To eager dogs did he pursue in chase, of which the one was black, the other white, with deadly force, so in their cruel race. Now we can just concentrate on that first stanza, and when we look at that first stanza, we are getting words that are rhyming. For example, we have a word see and me. Those are rhyming words. We also have a word delight and white. They also rhyme. And then we also have chase and race. They also rhyme. So it is easy for you to get a rhyming words in a sonnet poem. Let's look at the next poem. Our next poem is known as name poem. And in name poem, they are popularly among children and are often used in schools. So they're popular among what? Children, and often used in schools. The name of the person becomes the poem. So they can take a name of a person, and from that name, they form a what? A poem. Each letter in the name is the first letter in the line of the poem. For example, like when you look at a poem down there, we have a poem called Duncan. And each letter of the word Duncan has a what? Has been used in a line. For example, drew naughty cucumbers frantically, umbilical yet chubby, notified us generously, cavorted willfully, apologized selfishly, nabbed frankly but courageously. Now that is an example of a what? Name poems. It has a name Duncan, and the name Duncan has been used to form or to come up with a poem. Now let's look at now what the poem consists, the elements of poetry. Elements of poetry, what is consisted in the poem. Now we start by persona. And most of the students are always confused by this word persona. First of all, you have to note that, or you have to realize that a persona is not the person, is not a poet, sorry. A persona is not a poet or a person who has written the poem. Are we together? That is not a persona. A persona is the voice or the person who is speaking from the poem. The voice that is coming out, or the person who is speaking in the poem. Are we together? Now, for example, we have our poem there called Atieno, a freedom song, yeah? A freedom song. And it goes like this. Atieno washes dishes, Atieno plucks the kitchen, Atieno gets up early, beds her sacks down in the kitchen, Atieno 8 years old, Atieno you. Say she is my sister child, Atieno needs no pay. While she works, my wife can sit, so sewing even every sunny day with a earrings, with her earnings, I support Atieno yo. Atieno sly and jealous, but example to the kid. Since she minds them like a schoolgirl, want their dresses, shoes and beads. Atieno, 10 years old. Atieno yo. Now, from that poem, we've just looked at the 3 stanzas. From that poem, now a question can come and ask you, who is the persona? Who is the persona? And from our poem, we can say that a persona is the uncle of Atieno, because when you look at stanza 2, it reads, since she is my sister's child, Atieno needs no pay. So since she is my sister's child, who is speaking? It is an uncle. Are we together? An uncle describing how he's staying with her, Atieno. And since she is my sister's child, he thinks that Atieno needs no pay. So the persona in that poem is the uncle. Are we together? And not the poet. Now, if we could say that the persona is the poet, now the poet there is Marjorie Oluze McGoey. Are you together? That is a poet. And that one cannot be a persona. A persona must be the voice that is coming out from the poem, or the person who is speaking in the poem. And the person who is speaking in this poem is the uncle to Atieno. Hope we are together there. Now let's move on to the next, where we have subject matter. Where we have subject matter. When you talk about subject matter, it is simply talks about what the poem is all about. What the poem is all about. And to understand subject matter, you need to answer the questions below. 1. What event, situation, or experience that the poem describe or record? 2. Who is the speaker? Is the poet speaking in the role of another person, an animal, or a thing? 3. To whom is the speaker? Is the speaking talking? 4. What is the time setting, hours of the day, season, and era? Last but not least, what is the place setting? So those are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself for you to be able to give fully on what the poem is all about. Remember, there a question can be like, it can have 3 or 4 marks. Are we together? Now, when you look at the poem Freedom Song, a poem about Atieno yo. Now, what is the subject matter there? So the subject matter can be, the poem is about a young girl called Atieno, and who is mistreated by her own uncle. Are we together? She works without pay and ends in death due to postmortem bleeding. So what event, situation describe the record? So the situation or event there is the mistreatment that Atieno is going about. Who is the speaker? The uncle. Who is the speaker? We have her own uncle there. Is the poet speaking the role of another person or animal? Number 3, to whom is the speaker talking? Are we together? Speaker is trying to describe about who? Atieno. What is the time setting? The same setting and ends in death for due. So it is something that happened to who? Atieno. So it is in past. What is the place setting? It's uncle's place. So from there, that's what we've come up with, something like a poem is about a young girl called Atieno who is mistreated by her own uncle. She works without pay and ends in death due to postpartum bleeding. So that's what all about the subject matter in Freedom Song. Subject matter in Freedom Song. We have another poem here Building the nation, building the nation. Now in this poem, I want us to identify two, the persona and also identify the subject matter. Today, I did my share in building the nation. I drove a permanent secretary to an important urgent function. In fact, to a luncheon at the Vic. The menu reflected its importance. Cold bell beer with small talk. The fried chicken with niceties. Wine to fill the hollowness of the laugh. Ice cream to cover the stereotype jokes. Coffee to keep the peers awake on the return journey. I drove the permanent secretary back. He yawned many times in back of the car. Then to keep awake, he suddenly asked, "Did you have any lunch, friend?" I replied, looking straight ahead and secretly smiling at his belated concern that I had not, but was slimming. Upon which he said with a seriousness that amused more than annoyed me, "Mwananchi, I too had none. I attended to matters of state, highly delicate diplomatic duties, you know, and friend, it goes against my grain, causes me stomach ulcers and wind." Ha, he continued, yawning again. The pains we suffer in the building the nation, so the PS had ulcers too. My ulcers, I think, are equally painful, only they are caused by anger, no sumptuous lunches. So two nation builders arrived home this evening with terrible stomach pains, the result of building the nation in different ways. So that is a poem, Building the Nation. So we have two people in the poem. Now, first of all, who is the persona in this poem? Who is the persona? So the persona in this poem is a senior government officer's driver who drives him to an expensive hotel. Because we can get in stanza what? Stanza 2, yeah? No, stanza 3. It reads, I drove the permanent secretary back. He yawned many times in back of the car. Then to keep awake, he suddenly asked, "Did you have any lunch, friend?" I replied, looking straight ahead and secretly smiling at his belated concern that I had not, but was slimming. So we have the word there, I drove the permanent secretary back. He yawned many times. So the word drove there gets at that he was a government officer driver who drives him to an expensive hotel. So the persona there is a driver. Then what is the subject matter in the poem? What is the poem talking about? What are we getting from that poem? So the subject matter, the poem is about the government officer who attends an official function at a hotel. The meals he takes here are expensive. The driver looks at him as he eats. Are we together? So that is the subject matter. The suffering that the driver is going through while with the boss, yeah? The boss is eating, having good time, while the driver is just there looking at him and not having anything to eat. And then you also find that by the end of the day, they both have stomach pains. One is stomach caused by hunger, and the other one, it's because he either ate too much or mixing up the food, he came up with something like ulcer. Are we together? So you can get the difference in these two. These are two people living in the same nation, but now building the nation, one person is suffering and the other one is enjoying the life. So from there you can come up with a subject matter. Now in our next lesson, we are going to look at thematic message. In our next lesson, we are going to look at thematic message. So stay tuned. Let's meet in our next lesson. Otherwise, have a lovely day and thank you. And I'm going to send the notes on the apart from this video. There are notes that I'll send, and please try and take down the notes, because some of you are complaining that it is not clear here. So this is just a video of explaining everything that I've taught you today, but I'm also going to send a separate note. Otherwise, have a lovely day, stay safe, and sanitize. Thank you.